Welcome to The Place Inside, the podcast for the metaphysical freedom fighter, broadcast from a location in Mexico City to the world. This is episode number 10. I am your host, Laurence Galian. I want to thank all the new listeners who are joining in the fight for the freedom of our souls and minds. We have a great deal of urgent information to pass on to you tonight, and it may not be possible in just one transmission. We may relay this to you in 2 transmissions. Stay tuned. Let's begin. I'm a terrible person because I led her on. A singer sings as a man's cologne commercial plays on the TV. It is time for a commercial break in the midst of a tidal wave of a certain type of program. Discovery Channel, Nat Geo, and other stations are suddenly flooding the cable TV market with high-priced, big production programs that all tell stories about aggressive extraterrestrials invading the Earth. If they don't get us with their ray guns, their secret agents hiding for thousands of years on Earth will get us with their most powerful death ray of all, the advertisement. Of course, I am joking, but you know at the same time I am definitely not joking, because it is a war in the consciousness that is being fought. Why are all these programs focusing on invasion? We must, as citizens of a country that is exporting these mind and consciousness influencing programs, ask ourselves, why has there not been a single program that tells a story of 2 cultures, ours and the alien culture from another planet or time period or dimension, and how these 2 cultures learn to communicate and share their wealth of wisdom and knowledge? Those people who are very involved in spirituality know that it is often said that the East, especially India, devoted itself to spiritual development technologies and the acquisition of wisdom, while the West devoted itself to materialistic technologies and the acquisition of material possessions. Certain people are now in the news and media saying that we should fear contact with aliens, as superior cultures always supposedly overwhelm and absorb inferior cultures. Well, the people who are saying this, who are saying we should be afraid of contact, are using models of countries that focused heavily on their war-making abilities, such as the Europeans overwhelming and defeating the indigenous American Indian. Yes, the Europeans had better weapons of destruction, such as cannons and so forth. However, what if we encounter aliens who come from a civilization focused on spirituality? Then I think the situation would be quite different. The scenario would be quite different, as certain countries and peoples of planet Earth, from the Dalai Lama to the head of the great mystic orders, are immensely sophisticated spiritually. Why do we have this great inferiority complex, automatically believing that we would be inferior to any visiting aliens? We are like young kids entering a new school, afraid we are going to get beaten up on the schoolyard grounds. We need to shake that attitude off us, for it does us no good in any sense of the term. The 3 top new Hollywood UFO sighting and alien films, according to various film critics, are: first, Super 8, which is coming out right about now. This film was written by J.J. Abrams, who just did Star Trek a few years ago, and it's a shout-out to the science fiction films of the 1970s. And next is Cowboys and Aliens, which is coming out July 29th. This film features Harrison Ford and James Bond's Daniel Craig as quote-unquote cowboys fighting off an alien invasion. It's based on an adaptation of the 2006 graphic novel by Fred Van Lente. And finally, on August 5th, we have The Darkest Hour, the film that looks at the dark side of both the ongoing and possible new alien invasion, with aliens on the prowl in Russia, with the idea of being able to fight the aliens. Now, at the same time, members of the United Nations Scientific Committee are said to be reviewing proposals for the United Nations to set up a UFO task force that will coordinate any direct contact with aliens. Moreover, it's believed that the United Nations would serve as the communication center with alien civilizations. With that in mind, sources say Cometa is being reviewed because alien and UFO quotes would impact world security, unquote. Very interesting. That last quote does show how so many governments automatically view contact with a new civilization as a threat to their security. Quote, would impact world security, unquote. As we've spoken about, many world leaders and 99.999% of all military men and women think in black and white. You learn wisdom in the place inside that you cannot find anywhere else. For example, we just mentioned that Hollywood and the Pentagon tend to think in terms of black and white. In other words, war or peace. In their minds, another country is either a friend or foe, nothing in between. This is, psychologically speaking, a sign of borderline personality disorder if we were talking about a single individual. However, it does apply to the group as well. Look this up if you want more information about it. BPD, borderline personality disorder. Now I will tell you something that you have not heard anywhere else, something to really chew on. While many of the civilizations and nations on planet Earth express aggression through violence, let us consider the individual again for a moment. How many of you have heard of passive-aggressiveness? This is a way that certain people express their hatred, anger, and aggression. Many people only express their aggression in this form. I will quickly explain for those not familiar with this concept. A passive-aggressive person expresses their aggression in non-direct ways. Instead of speaking up and directly confronting the person they are angry with, they attack in an indirect way. The term passive-aggressive actually was introduced in a 1945 U.S. War Department technical bulletin describing soldiers who weren't openly insubordinate but shirked duty through procrastination, willful incompetence, and so on. Now, according to this book that outlines just about every so-called psychological disorder called the DSM, so we're getting this from the revised third edition of the DSM-3R that came out in 1987. Someone had passive-aggressive disorder if he or she displayed 5 or more of the following behaviors. 1. He or she procrastinates. 2. Sulks or argues when asked to do something he or she doesn't want to do. 3. Works inefficiently on unwanted tasks. 4. Complains without justification of unreasonable demands. 5. Quote-unquote forgets obligations. 6. Believes he or she is doing a much better job than others think. 7. Resents useful suggestions. 8. Fails to do his or her share. Or 9. Unreasonably criticizes authority figures. Of course, this applies to both sexes. Sometimes what I just outlined for you is necessary. In fact, women often resort to passive-aggressiveness as they, generally speaking, are not physically stronger than men are and have good reason to fear if they directly confront a man with their anger and he happens to be an asshole. They have good reason to fear him becoming violent. So let's just say that passive aggressiveness is an indirect way of expressing negative thoughts and feelings. Therefore, now we have broken the Pentagon black and white paradigm and given you your first example of how a person can be aggressive, but without resorting to violence. Let's take this further and start talking about particular peoples and cultures in the present and past. In some cultures, when two tribes make war on one another, this war will be made through a dance. You heard me right, through a dance. That is a quote-unquote mock war between the two tribes. Can you imagine, instead of a fisticuffs violent brawl, they have a dance? These two tribes learned long ago that this way of making quote-unquote war is much healthier in terms of everyone being able to survive, keep their lives, come home to dinner with their families, than a war in which people do their very best to kill other people. This is a mistake the United States military may have made already. Various countries' air forces have been given the order to shoot down, to bring down any UFO they encounter. What if these visitors had come in a spirit of inquiry, and we greeted them with a statement that our intention is to destroy them if we can? Maybe they came in a spirit of scientific inquiry, but are a race of people with very little patience. Alternatively, maybe they are a race of people with a lot of pride. It is probable that if we, for example, insulted them, if they are people with a great deal of pride, they will respond in a hostile way. There are many human beings who are fine individuals as long as you show them respect. But if you start to act in a disrespectful way toward them, watch out. In other cultures, anger and aggression is expressed through biting satire. True enough, an individual will hire, now this goes back thousands of years, all the way up to the present, but an individual will hire a professional writer or poet to write a scathing, satirical poem about the person the individual despises. This was done in many Celtic cultures, for example. Nevertheless, this concept of the war of satire has taken place many times between countries. Many a deadly and lengthy war has been averted through an exchange of very sophisticated satirical poems and epic stories. To us, this idea may seem absurd. However, 1,500 to 1,000 years ago, in many places, this was deadly serious, and the most effective and most entertaining poem would afford that country victory. I could go on at length listing all these various countries, but I am trying to save time in the effort of communicating a concept here. If you want, you can do your own research on this on the internet and in the library. In other Celtic lands and elsewhere in the world, a person will sit on a bench next to the front door of the person with whom he or she is having a dispute. This lets the whole village know that the person in the house needs to address the complaints of the person sitting on the bench. Not necessarily that the person on the bench is automatically right, just that the village will make sure both individuals can air their grievances before everyone in the village. And that person will sit on that bench for days, weeks, months, if necessary, to get that person inside to address them, to address their grievance. And the whole community knows it. Okay, I could go on and on. Perhaps you've gotten my point by now. Hopefully. My point is, aggressive aliens may express their aggression in the most bizarre and unexpected of ways, in our opinion. Moreover, for them, this expression may be profoundly serious, for this is the way that they express aggression in their culture. Therefore, we may observe some huge mothership slowly approaching Earth. All of the military men and women of the Earth preparing for a shootout. And what happens? When the aliens arrive, they flood our minds with an insulting portrait that exaggerates or distorts the values of many people in the United States of America, to create an easily identifiable visual likeness of our fellow citizens. They may force, for example, on every computer monitor and iPod, a description of a typical beer-guzzling sports fan in a sports bar, or they may mock the materialism of typical rap singers, to the materialism of the well-dressed, clean-cut, good old fella going to work in Wall Street, who's stealing as much money as he can from the public's pension. Yes, there is a lot about the United States that could be insulted in such a fashion. We could exaggerate and distort the values of these people, and it may not be exaggeration or distortion. That is your opinion. These extraterrestrials will be using exaggeration of some characteristics, if that is their way to express aggression. Of course, to our quote-unquote macho way of looking at things, remember that this is from the point of view of the borderline personality disorder. The aliens' behavior will seem to be laughable. We only take seriously countries like Iraq and Afghanistan that do not have any real air force and don't have any real army and cannot mount any real defense against us. And then we go in and destroy the shit out of their country. As you might have realized, I was being facetious there. But some people listening to this program might say, right on, Laurence. That's exactly what we do. We look for the weakling to pick on, the country that really can't shoot back. So we send in our stealth fighters to get those bastards. There was a time when this country was great, and this country did take on real enemies, like in World War II, when we took on the Germans and the Japanese, who both had real air forces, real armies, real navies, and in the case of Germany, rocket ships and other incredible offensive and defensive weapons. So now, we may not even realize we are being attacked. We may not realize how to properly respond until it is too late. Yet we know that it is possible the aliens' aggressiveness is quite real. It may not be expressed in the way most Earthlings express aggressiveness. Generally, we have not evolved much beyond physical altercations. We only stop ourselves personally from becoming violent if we fear our violence may affect our spiritual station, the possibility of going to jail. In short, if we may lose something. There was a great Sufi woman, saint actually, who said, God, do not let me go to heaven if I do good deeds just to get into heaven. but send me to hell if I refrain from evil just to stay out of hell. She was a wise woman. Her name was Rabia. In short, when interacting with aliens, we must draw from such sources as the spiritual path known as Taoism. Tao is represented by that yin and yang circle. Half of it is black, half of it is white, and there's the two dots, a white dot in the black half and a black dot in the white half. In other words, we must be flexible and flow with the situation. If we bring our reality tunnel to the situation, then we run the risk of never understanding what is happening, and we run the risk of completely misunderstanding the visitors. Clearly, violence and physical aggression are often ways that individuals and groups express their negativity. But remember my words, groups will express their negativity in a wide variety of ways. I think it is fascinating that the United Nations may serve as the communication center. There's many a UFO author out there who thinks he or she is going to be very famous after disclosure. A very serious game of chess is going on amongst the people on the UFO circuit, conferences, and so forth, for the role of official liaison with the extraterrestrials. Much maneuvering is going on in back rooms, and much posturing is going on in front of the public, because these people want to be the most famous human being. In other words, the person who represents the world to the aliens. Now, we know a kind of dialogue has been going on for untold millennia with the aliens. But this would be a kind of formal meeting taking place in the public in a certain prescribed, pre-scripted way. The Bible clearly states that demons are spirits. Spirits do not have flesh and bones. In other words, demons are not described in the Bible as being able to take form. The great prophet Jesus said that spirits do not have flesh and bones. They are not fallen angels or demons. Let's not become overly obsessed with religious text and trying to fit the extraterrestrial experience into our archetypal visions and values. The person UFO hunter, he or she has a channel on YouTube, and he or she says, normally in the past, people label things that they did not understand with their religious belief structures. It is difficult to interpret what they do not know or are afraid of. Fear is our enemy, not some artificial man-made creation. Many people have been listening to one particular radio personality who is saying that aliens are ghosts. Ghosts are people who have died before. And even though some ghosts can be scary, violent, or angry, this doesn't make them demons and doesn't make them aliens. They are people with troubled pasts. Many religious texts speak of the alien visitors from the past, and these visitors have come here for many different reasons. However, to spend your time trying to count how many angels can fit on the top of a pin is to waste your valuable time. It is helpful to learn what we can from these sacred sources, but the writers of these texts were seeing the world through the point of view of whatever time and place in which they lived. They used the vocabulary that was available to them at that time. When, for example, the prophet Ezekiel brought forth his book, he did not have the word, quote-unquote, scalar in his vocabulary. He described what he saw through his cultural lenses, his religious lenses, and his scientific lenses. or glasses, however you want to put it. People who are extremely conservative in their approach to religion. People who are obsessed with the surface interpretation of their holy books, the extremists, the orthodox, and so forth. Yes, these people need to have some kind of religious ruling on what ETs are, because this type of person is so afraid of reality that they need books and men to tell them how to perceive reality. They are afraid to experience reality on their own and come to their own conclusions. They want someone else to do the work for them. They need the comfort of a worldview that is pre-explained for them. Then there are those who foolishly hide in their minds, hiding in a make-believe world in which they believe they are Jesus or another great being, because they also are just as afraid as the extremists are. Sadly, I currently have reached the count of knowing 3 individuals who suffer from the psychological delusion that they are Jesus. These are fine people who are just suffering from a mental disease, and we thank the ultimate reality for our health. Others choose to viciously deny the reality of UFOs or extraterrestrials. Notice how some people start frothing at the mouth when you bring this subject up. Why do they start turning red and start yelling and acting very foolishly when you bring this subject of UFOs up? These people are often those who hide in academia. They hide from reality in universities. Now, please do not think I am saying that religious people, professors, and so forth are somehow inferior to me or to you. Each of us has our own quote-unquote stuff we need to work on, okay? We all are in the process of bettering ourselves. None of us is perfect. None of us can throw the first stone. However, we are also allowed to see what our eyes see, and there are many people hiding from the reality of ETs in a wide variety of ways. You need to do your own research. The life you see depends very much on how you see your life. This fact has been known since ancient times, and individuals who have sensed that they were, quote, their own worst enemy, unquote, have always sought help to free themselves of their self-harming delusions. Giving up your right to come to your own conclusions is an example of being your own worst enemy. Moreover, there have always been schools of secret wisdom for this very purpose, to help men and women discover their true quote-unquote eyes, their spiritual eyes, their spiritual vision, what we call the third eye, to see the world in all its beauty and majesty, to live a life that is expansive, inclusive, and filled with love. If we spend all our time in a DEFCON 2 level, or a Homeland Security quote-unquote high level, then we are pushing the pedal on our amygdala and living in a state of constant anxiety. This is exactly where the negative aliens, their progeny, and their human supporters want us. On the other hand, they also want us to believe that all aliens are filled with love for humankind and are only here to guide us and be our friends. Neither of these extremes is correct. I'm not talking about a sentimental kind of love. Not the kind of love where people send other people emails with flowers and pretty sunset pictures or little baby kittens. I've always wondered why, if these people believe that the ultimate reality expresses itself in sunsets on the ocean in Hawaii, if they believe that the ultimate reality is one, why they do not send I love you cards with volcanoes exploding and lightning flashing or a tsunami destroying a village. I'm not talking about the feeling you get when everything is going the way you want. That's just an emotional high. That's not love. I'm not talking about the feeling you get when a gorgeous woman is making love to you. Again, that's just another emotional and physical high, not love. I want you to have an empowered heart. No attachment to the outcome. Heroes risk and sometimes give up their lives for their principles. Again, think about all those books and movies you love in which the hero risks all to save the people living on a planet. Or he is risking his financial welfare and his life to save the princess, like Han Solo did in Star Wars. Anyway, I am talking about a kind of love that does not think about consequences. Don't be obsessed with fear. You are now on the true adventure. I know you want to be authentically powerful. If you let fear keep you in your house, then I am sorry to tell you, my friend, that you'll never go on any adventure. Let go of your worries about fear. Rarely are extremes the truth. Truth is inclusive, not exclusive. Beware of people who feel a great need to hang out at one or the other end of a spectrum. Get yourself into the present moment. Truly, I say to you, you are seeing, truly seeing, when you are living in the present moment. Keep remembering to be here now. You can act 1,000% more effectively if you are acting from the present moment. Now I will tell you some details that some of you will not realize until this moment. You know television is used by the evil progeny of the aliens who came here a very long time ago. But I will give you specifics. Screenwriters are told to put the word quote, quote, terrorist, unquote, in each episode of their shows. It does not matter what they then say or do. The only important thing is to keep that word in people's minds. They will do episodes where they put out disinformation about, for example, mind-expanding substances such as LSD. They will tell outright lies, like you can be poisoned and overdosed on LSD. Untrue. Now, I am not advocating the use of mind-expanding drugs. That is not something I can do on this station. I am advocating mind expansion. It is up to you as a human being to decide what you want to do with your mind. Your mind belongs to you, not to the government, not to your priest, rabbi, imam, not to a political party, not to a particular ufologist, not to a particular person that turns you on and you want to impress by behaving in a way that you think will attract him or her. Apparently, in Vietnam, according to General George Brown, U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff at the time, our fighters engaged UFOs several times in Vietnam. They were called, in slang, quote, enemy helicopters, unquote. They were seen around the DMZ, which stood for the demilitarized zone in those days, In the early summer of 1968, an Australian destroyer actually took a direct hit during one of these engagements. There is a video on my YouTube website. Look up my UFO playlist on my channel, Gargeniture.